welcome to the first episode of Selling Out, the podcast where queer business owners tell the truth about what it really takes to build something of your own.
Yes, it's all about carving out your path in your career. The wins, the wobbles, the breakthroughs, the breakdowns, and the beautifully messy middle bit in between.
We are Gary and Johnny, co-founders of Go Succeed, and we work with business owners every day who are trying to grow something meaningful without losing themselves in the process.
We are also proud sponsors of Gadio networking events up and down the UK. Just go to gosucceed.co.uk/Gadio to find out more and use code SUCCEED25, all capital letters, when you book your tickets.
We started this podcast to create a business conversation we wish we'd have, more representation, more honesty, and more you're not doing it wrong.
Yes, because let's be honest, building a business, whether you're LGBTQIA plus or not, is tough enough alone, so let's build it together. We talk identity, resilience, imposter syndrome, confidence, cash flow, courage, and the stuff no one puts in the Instagram highlight reel.
And today's episode is no exception. We've got the fantastic Mike Gallagher
and Georgie Dutton.
Before we get into today's guests, a quick thank you to our brilliant sponsors.
Yes, if you're heading to Brighton and you want your trip to be legendary, quite literally, book your stay at Legends Hotel, right on the seafront and just steps away from the city's best nightlife.
They're also the home to some of Brighton's hottest drag shows, so you can sleep, sip and party in all one place.
Yes, go to legendsresortbrighton.com and tell them that we sent you.
And if your current headache is less, where am I staying this weekend, and more, how do I buy this house?
Mortgage Medics have you covered. They specialise in straightforward, no drama mortgage advice, whether you're buying your first place, moving up, or refinancing.
Their team take the stress out of the process that finds the right deal for you, and they make sure you're still smiling long after you've got the keys.
Basically, they're your home owning headache cure. So go to mortgage-medics.com and tell them we sent you. They'll look after you. Welcome to Selling Out. How are we doing?
Really good, thank you.
Yes. So, like we said, we're going to cover all areas of business, of where you've been, where you are now. But I think let's start with the first question I think we're going to ask everyone, which was, what was your first job? Michael, let's start with you.
Well, my first job after leaving university, I joined the Metropolitan Police in 1987 and was a police officer for the next 29 years.
Wow. Can't wait to get into that. First job straight out of the bat into the police. And Georgie, what was your first job?
My first proper job was, so I used to work at Whiston House Conference Centre in Stenning. It's a government think tank at the time. I think it still does that kind of stuff. I was a waitress. Yeah.
You were working as a waitress in the cocktail bars.
What the hell? Lots of whiskies, but yeah.
And what about your Michael, starting with you, I guess, because going into the police, what year did you say it was?
1987.
1987. What, can you take us back there and paint sort of, how were you feeling about, specifically about yourself as, a gay man? Were you out at the time? Were you?
No, I wasn't at the time. You've got to sort of reflect back to what 1987 was, and what's, in many respects, you think that was still, quite an advanced time in terms of where society was. It was only around then that the first gay kiss appeared on EastEnders. And actually, in 1987, legislation made it illegal for anyone under 21 to have sexual relationships with the same-sex partner unless they were over 21, and it was in private. So legislatively, it was difficult. So I joined the police in 1987. An organisation which perhaps at that time wasn't the most liberal. It was very British, very conservative. And when I joined, I was silent about my sexuality, as many people were back then. And again, reflecting back on society, the tabloid press at that time would outwardly look to out people in public life, whether it's the police, the military, or politicians, and very actively so. And there's an example in the early 90s, the Lesbian and Gay Police Association, which was formed at that time, were having a social on a boat disco along the River Thames. And one of the tabloids followed that boat with a view of taking pictures of gay officers so they could publish them. So society was very different. The organisation was very different. But my ultimate reflection was I had a fantastic career and a fantastic time. And during my time in the police, I went from silent, not saying anything, to being known to be a gay officer. to being the lead for LGBTQI issues for the Police Superintendents Association of England and Wales. So a lot of journey over time, and it was a very positive experience.
Yeah. I mean, well, I think we'll get back into I want to talk about party boat. That's crazy. But just before we go into that, what did you feel? So obviously there was a need to be silent, and there was a kind of like, that wasn't, I guess, even a choice whenever you went in. That was just what it was. Because
there was a choice, and ultimately it was my choice. But, you embark on a career, you're not necessarily thinking about your sexuality. No, on day one, you're thinking about, I'm entering a new career. I've got my training to get through. I want to be positive about that. I want to succeed. And same in the early days, it was, I want to get through my probation. I want to be successful. I want to be a good officer. They were often the sorts of things you thought about. But ultimately, over time, equally, your sexuality and your coming out in the work environment became an issue as well. And ultimately, that's what happened. And it wasn't an issue.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the things I think we're going to explore with a lot of people on this podcast. Hopefully, is that idea of how certain people going into careers have to consider a lot more stuff than other people, and I think in our community, that's absolutely something you have to consider. Your identity, your sexuality, compared to what other people are just kind of going in having the same feelings about. I have to start this big career. I have to do well. I have to prove myself. On top of all that, and layered behind it, you've got this other stuff. So I think that's hopefully some of the stuff that we're going to kind of get into. And so for you were kind of more, you were thinking about like, this is my career path, rather than having to actively hide anything or consider that kind of side of things.
I mean, certainly in the early years, like I said, yes, I did hide it. It was hiding it. Then it was silently known, and not talked about.
So what silently known, was that just with like friends, close friends?
The team, sort of, as I became an inspector, my team all knew. They didn't say anything, but they knew that I was. And then as I moved further on, both in gaining promotion and realising I needed to be my authentic self to really, succeed. That was part of my journey equally.
I think for me, as well, as you go in even business world, as you get promoted and move up the ranks, things become a bit easier, don't they? Rather than being in the middle with everyone. I suppose the police service is probably very like that, because when you're, a constable at the bottom, there's many of you, and there's all of that kind of, can be that bullying, where people kind of single you out.
Yeah. I mean, everyone's journey is different. Yeah. And I've got to say, from my personal journey, being gay was never an issue once I came out, as it were. But I know for some officers, it's not as easy to do journey, and everyone's journey is different. But I've got to say, for me, the police gave me a fantastic career. I did amazing jobs and did some really interesting things. I had no regrets at all, and I would recommend it as a career for anybody.
Yeah. And Georgie, what about you, starting out in the world of work?
So you just mentioning that it used to be the police. I had designs about joining police when I was doing this job in this conference centre. I'd always wanted to be a police officer. I actually wanted to be a doctor when I was growing up. Doogie Howser back in the days in the OTs, and the start of ER and all that. Anyway, my other family went off to be doctors, and then I went off to join the prison service. So I didn't get into the police because I failed my medical, had a knee operation. And so I didn't get through the medical on that, which is a shame, because that's why I'd had the operation in the first place. Didn't really give it much thought about kind of just like recalling back to that time when I was at Prison Service College. I mean, it was brilliant. I mean, one of the reasons why I joined, I'm half jesting, but I thought I'm going to find my life partner here. There's going to be loads of lesbians there. So that'll be a good time. I knew that I didn't want to go and work at Holloway, which is a female prison at the time. I wanted to go and work in one of the local jails. But even though I'd applied nationally, anyway, once I'd done Prison Service College, had a real whale of a time, made some lifelong friends there as well. And I had a really good, I can't emphasise what a good time I had. I'm sure college is the same as well. And then arriving at the prison, it was a high security prison I worked in. So kind of you had to be on your guard all the time. I wasn't too sure about who I could trust. There'd been a couple of instances in the prison. There'd also been a big investigation in another prison to staff corruption and things. So I was really, really guarded, probably for the first year, I'd say. And also, you do your training, and then there's like that 6 months where all the grey areas, you're learning to find your feet, literally. So you know how to treat prisoners, but it was how do I work with the other officers, because everyone is quite independent. When I first arrived, I was pulled in by my manager, and I said, just to let you know that you'll probably be approached by this female officer and this male officer, and they'll try and, want to kind of get in your pants type of thing.
Wow.
So, and then
What year was this?
Oh, this was 90. What was it? 1990. Oh my god, going back
Early
Sorry,
90s.
maths. Yeah, 1999.
Oh, okay.
2000. Yeah.
Right.
And sure enough, that happened, and it's kind of like, let's go out for a drink and all that kind of stuff. Then a month in, I learned that there was a bet whether I was gay or not. So they had like a little notebook with stuff going on. But I just kept myself to myself, and also I was only addressed as Miss Dutton. No one knew my first name. No one knew where I lived, because everyone that worked in the Nick was generally from that area, and I was commuting to go up to London. So I really did like stick to my line. So I was a bit of a mystery to everyone, and I had long hair then as well. So yeah.
So there was kind of no socialising then. As guards outside of work, it was kind of like you went to work, came home.
Yeah, I was invited out, but I just thought I felt a bit out of place, because they'd had quite strong established relationships. And I mean, that later on in my career, obviously my barriers came down a little bit, learnt my tribe, and not necessarily the other gay, lesbian or queer people that worked in the prison service, but I learnt who I could trust. And that was... the unit I used to work on when I first started was called Beirut for a reason. It was like quite volatile, and there's a couple of characters on there as well. But the team that I ended up working with, or started working with, they basically became people that I'll turn to later on in my service career as well. So
So at the beginning, were you out? Did anyone know when you first were in that prison? Because obviously you said they had a book.
Yeah, Prison Service College I was, and the people that I trained with, there was 3 of us, and they were all guys. I was the only female, and they knew about me, but I just said, look, I don't want it to be common knowledge, because I saw it as, and I hate to say this word, but I didn't want people to know my private business, and I didn't want it to be used as a weapon, which I had previously seen.
Yeah, I've just on that, because I think this relates to, we can all relate to this in a way where we at times in our lives have felt that our identity or our sexuality is a weakness or a perceived weakness or something that we should be ashamed of. And I think there's a lot, and I'm sure people listening and watching will that will kind of resonate with, because I definitely have felt it. But you almost don't want, whether we see it as a weakness or not, that feeling of other people using it as a weakness, I think is something that's really unique to us. And like what we when we go into the workplace, that's something we have to consider. Is that something that you felt?
Yeah. And I felt like I wasn't being true to myself. But then, this was, like you said, this is my career. I'm going in this is, my job now, and my private life has nothing to do with this. So literally as soon as my keys went down that chute at the end of work, that was, I could be myself again. So not kind of leading a double life, but it was a kind of a life that, I believe that no one should be party to. We're looking after naughty people, but I've been also dealing with some quite horrific stuff as well. So it was, and some nice things too happened. It wasn't all bad all the time. And I worked with some amazing people, and, I had the opportunities to work in different departments and work alongside some amazing curators in like helping people. So worked in drug rehabilitation, and worked on a life unit, did a short spell with young offenders, and you got very little reward for the work that you did, and you always felt like you're chasing your tail a bit, especially a department, or if you had someone that you're working with independently. But the ones that did come through, or you wouldn't see again, I'm talking about prisoners. You know, that was kind of like the job well done for me. But that they were very few and far between in the 14 years that I did. Yeah.
We're going to talk about the highs and the lows with both of you in a second. What stands out as highs and lows in your career. But just to go back on the trust thing that you mentioned, because I think that's a huge thing, isn't it? Especially, you know, in a lot of walks of business or career or with the corporate world, there's not always that need to separate personal and private, personal and professional. But obviously, with the work that you two have been in, there absolutely is the need to. So, I guess that thing on trust really comes into it. How did you find that ability to have trust in coworkers, or in, you know, where does that start and end, I guess?
Well, I think I can say, I suppose, I relate to a lot of that as well. No matter when I moved my career, wherever it was, I didn't feel like you had to share. No one walks into a room and says, "Hey, I'm straight," and has to say about what their private thing is. So it wasn't that I ever hid it, but I wasn't going in there going, "Oh, I'm gay." You know, so when I started with the cooperative bank, and I moved around a lot, so I wasn't in or, you know, hid, but I was out. But I moved around loads of different cities, did loads of different things, I suppose. And I get it, where you're like, it's my private, I'm here doing a job, and I don't have to kind of go out there and say, "Oh, I'm gay," or whatever. But if someone asked me, I would say, "Yeah, I'm with Johnny," or, you know, that. But it's kind of that whole thing where you're trying to do that separate, isn't it? It's kind of like, because then people make a judgment. Sometimes I did feel that in the early days where people judged you, could it affect your career, you know, whether you're in corporate or the public service. I think it's there. People make judgments, don't they?
They do, and I think it goes back to that thing we talked about, whether it's a perceived weakness or something that should be judged. And I think it does feel a little bit mad now to think that, you know, I know, like Gary says, I think I definitely went through, I was in the fashion industry for my career, and, you know, you might consider that to be a very open, like, space in terms of sexuality and stuff. But turns out I was masking the whole time in terms of, like, really putting on a character of who I should be for that workspace. And, you know, that was a man that goes to work and does a job and is successful and is this. And it was wrapped up in all of that stuff that I didn't even realize until I left it a few years back. And I think that's why I'm so fascinated in kind of where is that line. And for some people, is it that it's just professional life and it's home life, and those are comfortably in the same world? Or is it really damaging, which it was for me, having that build up of separating work and life and not really letting them sort of in, I guess.
I think with the trust thing, just like, it's probably more importantly than anything else, being a woman in working in a very masculine, like, you can literally
absolutely
breathe in that testosterone. It's a very masculine environment, very misogynistic as well. So that was just, I kind of had to deal with that to start with, and then. Like I said, with the training that we have a job to do. And so whoever I was working with, or the team that I was working with, you know, there'll be everything's about timings and making sure that they run the regime. And believe it or not, that was something actually I was quite good at, apart from getting to work on time, which was a problem once I was there. See if someone knows who's listening. I had some real problems getting to work, but it was London and I lived on the South Coast. So, anyway, that aside, but I think I was quite good at what I did, and I was good to work with. I wouldn't back down. There was a couple of times when in the prison service, like I said, I was probably masking quite hard, and I possibly had a breakdown. And that was just, I was working a lot, and I didn't feel like I was part of the team. Just because I'd been masking so hard and didn't feel like I could really talk to anyone. And yes, I had some friends that I would talk to, but, you know, again, and I think it's like a relationship breakdown, that, you know, just try and find someone to talk to about, because relationships are quite intense, right? So, and I feel so lesbian relationships hard. There was 2 ways of doing it now. Take it very hard. But so I make it sound like I was completely isolated, and I wasn't, because my team, we were quite close, but there were just very limited times, unless we went and socialised with each other after work. But even in the break room, I wouldn't really want to talk about private stuff because you didn't know who was listening. And whether that would be used against you or to put my family at risk because of the people that we were dealing with. So yeah, I was quite guarded. And then, like yourself, I joined the lesbian and gay equivalent, which, oh my God, it was such an awful name. It was called GALIPS, Gays and Lesbians in the Prison Service. And that's like gay lips.
Gay lips.
Isn't it? And I want a awful. It was.
That needs a marketing team on it.
Yeah. I've still got the badge, and because I suddenly felt like this opening came up, and so this opening came up for me to be the lead role for the prison I was working at the time, and I thought, yeah, I'll do that because something needs to be said. And then it was like I came out, but I was there for the staff to talk to. It was all quite new as well. And obviously it was tick box exercise for the prison service at the time as well. And now I forgot what it's called now, but some mug that someone gave me. But yeah, they changed the name of it. Thank God.
So it sounds like, I mean, both of you went through the period of time where these groups and communities were established, or at least whether it was a tick boxing thing or whatever it was for, they were done. But just before we mention that, so you were talking about masking and sort of pretending and doing a certain thing with it. Michael, did you feel that thing of having a in-work mic and an outside of?
Very much. I mean, and I think many people, particularly the time I joined the police, and the police, like the prison service, is very masculine. The percentage of females versus males was very low, particularly when at that time. So a lot of people did naturally mask because of the nature of where society was at the time. And ultimately, if it reflects all later in life, I think Gary's point was very, very relevant, that as a gay person in any organisation, particularly in sort of policing, you're constantly having to come out. Whereas if you're just a straight officer, you're not having to have that. So you're constantly in whatever environment, whether it's a policing environment or it's a social environment connected with the policing, you are constantly coming out, and then you are having to deal with that reaction. Now, hopefully that's always positive reaction, but there is a different dynamic, I think, for a gay person in the workplace about that, particularly in times gone by.
I think it's also like the onus that you talk a lot. We talked a lot about DEI and things, and I don't think people quite grasp the importance of it whenever you actually consider the reality, which is, like you say, as queer people, as people LGBTQIA plus people in the workforce, the onus feels like it's absolutely on us to keep on coming up to, whether you hide or whether you keep on coming out. Whereas it actually should be on the spaces that we go in and we are part of, that the onus is on them to then create that sense of community and that ability to be yourself without having to, come out all the time or. And
I think it probably still happens today. And it's just the way society's gone, isn't it? And people don't actually realise, I think you could go into a workplace today and people have to keep coming out. We're very privileged to where we are now in our lives, us, and I always say this, we live in a bubble in Brighton. And we live in Hove, it's kind of a bit of a bubble, but there's places across the UK where it's still like that, and we still have to come out. And, whether there's, all the things about equality nowadays, there's still that kind of onus of, of having to come out. Which I just find is weird. I never really came out, I suppose. In my later days, I never really came out. People would ask you, and I suppose it is a way of asking, are you married? Do you have kids? And I would go, oh no, I'm married to Johnny. So then they can, make that assumption for themselves. But I never came to the point where going, I'm gay.
Me and Gary always have this discussion around, about visibility versus, comfortability. Like, it is, we know how important it is to be seen and be recognized. And actually part of the reason we're doing this and creating this podcast is because we're such big believers in diversity and inclusion. I mean, you have to, like, every human is an individual. Like, we all have our spectrums of where we are in terms of identity and sexuality and things, but you can only be what you can see, I think. And it's about representation as well which is why it's so good that these organizations, especially the ones you were in, came became, you know, a lot more inclusive. I remember back, you know, it wasn't a sexuality thing or an identity thing. It was a religious thing when we were growing up in Northern Ireland, because, you know, the inclusion around police and the public sector was around getting a mixed religion force and and people coming into the force. And you know, that brought with it all those things about, you know, if you were female and you were Catholic, people would say, oh, you're guaranteed a spot in the police then because you're Catholic and you're female.
Yeah.
But actually, it was something that has to change, and you have to have these kind of messy middles to get to change, to make the change, because otherwise it would have stayed the same and the force would have been seen the way it was.
But I think, even in Northern Ireland up to like 2010, people weren't even really talking about LGBTQ. The big thing was the equal opportunities of Protestant and Catholic. So Northern Ireland had its own thing going on. So it was even harder, I felt, to be gay in Northern Ireland. You know, it was. And when I worked in the Co-op Bank in Belfast, you know, the first time I went there was a gay guy that worked there. He came to me and said, "Are you gay?" Like, literally, I came in as the manager.
Isn't that the relief of like, tell me you are?
And it's like, oh, tell me you're gay. But, you know, no one else did that. But obviously, you know, he felt comfortable. You know, I remember turning out and we were doing the safe and counting the safe in the morning. And I was just like, what? Yeah, when he was like, are you gay? But it's kind of that thing, isn't it? Is always wanting to know, why does it matter?
Because, I think there's, I came out when I was 16, or I probably came out a lot sooner than that, but actually kind of spoke to people about it. But I still feel I have that inner guilt as well. Which, I hate to say it, but it's just like you just saying that, you know, meeting other gay people, and I do, you know, it's not the phase or anything like that. And, you know, growing up, and I knew that I fancied women, and I just thought that would pass. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah.
I think I relate to that because I grew up, I always say I was told who I was before I ever knew who I was. And I was told perpetually from when I was young, whether it was at home from my brother or in school being bullied, it was gay boy, fat as well. Fat gay boy. I had the trifecta. And it's a gay boy. Everyone called me gay boy, gay boy, gay boy. And I think I sort of remember fancying one of the teachers, but I also fancy girls. So I didn't know. I was confused. I was a confused child. Turns out, spoiler alert, cut to now, I'm pansexual and non-binary. So they were wrong on both counts, not gay or a boy. But I was told, and I've heard this from a lot of people who had the same thing, where you're told what you are before you even know. And it's because of things that you're not in control of. And also because of things I've met the campest straight men. And, you know, it's all, everything is a spectrum. And actually your behaviors don't dictate your love spectrum or what you're into or what you know, it's so much more beautiful and diverse than that, I think. So it's tricky sometimes whenever you get told before. So I relate to that coming out of not really knowing.
Yeah, but your stereotypes, where I feel very much like the stereotype of being a lesbian right now.
Love that stereotype, Georgie.
Yeah, it has. I think hopefully it's come a long way now. I mean, I've got my own business and stuff, so I'm a PT now. I also work in a pub. Can I mention the pub?
Yeah. Yeah, we are going to get on that. We're going to get on it. So we're going to get on that. No, first of all, I want to come back to something actually. Yeah. Well, you do yours first. I was going to ask about the Pride initiatives or the LGBTQ+, but what were you... But I just wanted to come back to kind of what Michael said earlier on about how the press followed a boat. That links to trust. And that's what was that, the 80s?
No, that was the early 90s.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's in our lifetime. And you just think...
In one respect, it seemed, how could that have happened? But that's equally 39 years ago. You know, when I joined the police in the 87, so it was early 90s, so...
Yeah, well, still...
But 30 also mad to, like... So, obviously, I don't think... certain younger listeners, I guess, won't relate to the fact that tabloid media were horrendous at hounding celebrities, people, like, for whatever story they needed to make. And in the 90s, I guess, around after the late 80s and then everything that happened through the 90s was harassing constantly and trying to find out if people were gay. And I think we've still got that in culture today where that people talk about queer baiting, which drives me nuts a lot, about, you know, if an actor who has been ambiguous or hasn't said anything about their sexuality takes a queer role, people hound them for finding out whether they're queer baiting or whether they're gay or whether they're straight. And it's a complete hypocrisy of actually letting people be who they want whilst reflecting identities on screen, which I think is super important. You know, they are playing these parts. We should be revering the fact that this storytelling is taking place. But the actual thing about hounding that boat, what did that look like? How did that feel from within the police, like having seen that?
I mean, the whole purpose was to out people publicly, and that was a new story that they could say person X, and particularly if they were a senior officer, it was a way of, you know, selling papers. And there's a very, very well-known police officer now, Lord Brian Paddock, who was the commander at Brixton, who introduced a policy regarding cannabis use in Brixton, which was quite controversial at the time. And the press, the tabloid press, the headline was Camp Commander. So it was seen as something that the tabloid is acceptable news reporting, and, you know, same for the military. So the whole purpose of the following is that was to identify that the police had these horrible gay officers, and it's all disgusting and shouldn't be allowed, and etc. etc.
Did you know anyone personally that was affected? Not that was out. I did. How was affected them? No,
I didn't know anyone on that, but clearly, what would that make you feel?
Yeah,
someone joining the police. It's something I'm not going to be out, because the danger is I'm going to be outed in the press.
Yes.
So are you saying you weren't on the party boat, man?
I know. Yeah. How surprised?
Surprised me you weren't on that, but
Always on the top.
I know, exactly. You can't give them up. But no, I think that it's that thing of clutching pearls. I always think when I read, and I think we all do, whenever certain things come out in the media or wherever it comes out, when it's dealing with a certain topic or trying to sensationalize our identity, our community, our sexuality, it's like, I always get that feeling of, the Daily Mail clutching pearls reader who like looks at something when actually it's just been done to sell a story.
it still comes out today, you know, if you think about it in the newspapers. It's like, this person has come out as gay, this person has come out as gay, this person is trans, or this person is bi, or this there's still a lot of it in the press today.
Yeah, but that's different. So actually, because I can reflect, I can recognize that when I was growing up, seeing any of those stories about someone being brave enough, especially then to come out or to, you know, to talk about it, that's what we needed, and that's what's created the change. So I think it's still super important. I think that we need to understand, you know, when it happens and how people are being hounded for it, and letting people come out when they can.
No, I think it's, yeah, if people are doing it, but I think the press still do hound people and try to find out. I think there's still a bit of that goes on even today.
I mean, just going, yours was back in the 90s. So when I joined, and I remember there was a lot of the people I worked with are ex-military. And there was a couple of them that worked in the military police, the Red Caps, or whatever they called themselves. And it was, I just remember them talking about stories about they would actually go, and when they were in their careers before they were working with me, you know, they would go out and look for gay relationships, and there was still a kind of a bit of that mentality that had come into their work life in the prison service as well. So, you know, gay men who worked in the prison service, and also if they were coming in as one of the people who were at Majesty's Pleasure at the time, would also get a bit of a rap. It felt that way. And, you know, we did talk about this briefly before, that there was a couple of things that I had to do in my job role that I did not feel comfortable doing, just because it didn't align with my values, and that, you know, this is a person in front of us here. I'm also a human being. I now have 100 other people to look after, but, you know, this needs to be addressed, because there is no ruling for what's happening in this space right now. So, and, you know, really put myself out on a limb, and probably a bit to my, I put myself out on a limb there, and, you know, I don't know if the promotion didn't happen, but I did go for a promotion, and I just didn't get through in the end. I just wasn't actually very interested in it. About 2 years doing. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I feel like that whole idea of being held back or pushed forward, depending on who you are and how you present, is a big thing. And especially something that affects us, I guess. If you play game and if you play ball the way it mentions, says you should, then I guess you get rewarded for that.
Yeah. And it was, you know, I did at the time, but where I worked is one of the most diverse prisons in the whole of the country. So I was very privileged to work in that environment. And when I talk about things, it's not necessarily was happening where I was working. I know across the board and up north is very, very different as well. Kind of a bit of harder stuff up north, and also every single prison in the country had its own kind of problems going on with staffing or with things that were going on, the kind of demographic of people that they were getting in prison. So yeah, different problems.
And I think even today it probably is still very hard in prisons, for gay people working as officers in prisons. It would be, because it would be used against them, because it's kind of, is it homophobia, or it's just, prisoners will use things just against you to kind of do it, and it's kind of that whole, but I would say it's probably still quite relevant even today in prisons. Not, yeah.
I was just going to say, actually, when things like Christmas came up or Easter holidays, and it's just kind of like, hey, we work like closely together. It's like, hey, do you mind doing my Christmas because the kids? And I'm like, yeah, sure, no worries, I'll do that for you. And New Year, yeah, I was young. Oh yeah, do that. And then it was kind of like year 8 of covering for everyone. And then I was like, actually, I'm a kid. Like, me and my dad might want to see me, or my family might want to see me on Christmas. And it was kind of not saying that they're kind of the gays and the lesbians and the queer folk were the people that kept the glue together. But if you weren't a parent, then that was kind of, I wouldn't say expected, but there was that kind of unwritten rule that's what happened.
You're right. And even when I've heard that. Even when I worked in the bank, people used to say that to me. So when I said, we got a family, whatever. I've got a family, I've got kids. Can I have Christmas off? Can I have this off? They don't. And they would come to you and people would say, such and such doesn't, whether they're gay, straight up. But if they didn't have kids, for instance, they come to you and say, they don't have kids. I need Christmas Eve off because I need to get the kids presents wrapped. Well, you're not. Just
I love it. I heard that so many times, and I love the responses to it, because it's not just queer people. It obviously it's queer people in our community who, some have kids, some don't have kids. It's not a queer alone issue. Yeah. And also women who proudly and don't want to have kids and want to, childless, God forbid, childless women and childless straight couples. I think we need a lot more, but the people who have gone down that path, and I think that's the thing for me. That's the thing where it is for me, being in our community or being part of our community is a superpower, because we just have a different perspective and we've had to cut our own path, and that is not the path that's led down the ideal or the expected route, which is the assumption that you're straight, that you are going to have kids or have kids, and that you do these things. That's kind of, for me, having that perspective outside of that is something that I love. But just to talk about the pride stuff and the things that were brought in terms of, you were saying lesbian and gay society or people within the police, and you were saying about gay lips or whatever. What did that look like, and how did that change perceptions, and did it change perceptions, like whenever it came in, like?
I mean, what it gave is an opportunity for people to realise they're not on their own. There are other gay officers. And even if it was that time where people were silent, you could meet other gay officers. That support network is obviously vital. And, I'm sure hopefully now it's much different, that you join the police service and there's lots of gay people just in and around you. And I think the other kind of important element, not necessarily about the Gallagher as a staff association, also having role models in senior positions that actually there are not necessarily the barriers that are going to stop me going from where I want to do. Yeah, because sometimes we impose our own barrier, our own ceiling, because might not be good enough for that, or I might have to expose myself a little bit more. So role models and support of colleagues is, I think, really, really important. And that's how, in part, the police has changed. Obviously, society has changed as well. And you mentioned, positive policies to promote inclusivity. That happened at the same time. But all of those elements obviously has contributed to, hopefully, a very, very different organisation now.
Yeah, community and visibility are huge, aren't they? And that's what I was saying earlier, whenever we were saying about, it shouldn't matter. The onus shouldn't be on us to come out and stuff, but God, do I love when I see someone in positions of power or positions of any walk of life who come out or who are honest about themselves or who say it And when they say it, they say, listen, I'm doing this because I know from experience there's so many people out there who aren't brave enough to, or who don't have the confidence, and it's holding them back. And I think that if anything is holding you back, there's enough shit going on in the world. If there's anything holding you back that's about yourself and being honest with yourself, that you can get some levity from seeing someone else do it, I think it's really important.
Isn't the Dutch Prime Minister, he's gay now? The new Dutch Prime Minister, he's...
Oh, do we need fact check on that?
I would have to do a fact check. But I believe he is there. Yeah.
But we were just in, we've been doing all of the Gadio networking events, shout out Gadio networking. And we were there last, in the Glasgow event, and Xander Murray was there. And Xander is ex-footballer and is very vocal about using his platform, about, being out. There's not, people do struggle things are getting better, but he gets hate constantly from fans and from people who, love football, but then will not tolerate this idea of having a gay man as a player in sport. And I think in saying that, in women's football, it's been so refreshing to see how open a lot of the players there can be in women's football. And that says something to me about where we're going and what actually it could look like whenever we just accept it and have... Yeah.
And I think just going on that with the gay networking, like you said, when they start the LGBTQ associations within corporations and organizations, there isn't really that for small business owners, and it can feel very lonely, which is why we're really proud to be with Gadio right now, because I've been networking in Brighton. There's a lot of networking in Brighton. But surprisingly, there's a lot of networking in Brighton. I've been to a lot of networking events where I haven't met another LGBTQ person. And is it because they don't feel comfortable in, and that's it. And that's why I think it is important, like Gadio doing this, and associations and businesses to really kind of help those people to see, actually, you can do it. Yeah. And I think it's a really, really powerful thing.
And it just thinking back to one of the meetings that we had for the, I really need to remember what it's called now. Prison service. So apologies, prison service. But it's on my mug.
It's on the mug.
Yeah. So we had a meeting, and there was people mostly from like South England. People travelled down to come to the conference. And the LGBTQ plus conference, and I remember one of my colleagues saying is that everyone was like talking about these like things that they were going to do, and that they celebrate Pride Month, and then there was other prison staff from other prisons going, "Are you kidding me? Like I'd be set on fire." And it's like living in a cave, and you could see that the different barriers that people were having to break down. This is like early 2000s, and then all of a sudden I felt very privileged. Just like kind of, I didn't have to confront that. And also I also thought, maybe I should do like an LGBTQ thing, so we did something in the light, it was very small, in the library. It got ripped up and everything, but at least everyone saw it, which is, it's the airport. You just never know that the power of even just, for instance, wearing just like a rainbow band or like a little badge with pronouns on, or can mean the world to someone. So yeah.
So let's talk about some career highs and career lows before we move on to your fabulous businesses that you've got now. Any career high? Well, should we start with the highs or the lows?
Let's start with the lows.
End on a high.
End on a high.
What do you remember as a low that in business, whether or not it's related to being gay or
In business?
In either in your career or in your business?
Oh, I have to think about that. Just give me a moment.
Georgie, can you think of one?
Okay.
In business, it's not kind of about my kind of gay identity as such, but COVID was massive. That was because I've just when I left the prison service, I became a personal trainer. I was bodybuilding at the time, or just coming the back end of the career that I thought was going to be for me. It didn't really work out, but I still I've always enjoyed training myself, enjoyed the gym. And then COVID hit, and I was working for. I haven't mentioned that I used to work for Virgin Active, but sorry. There are other gyms available. Definitely, go to another gym.
Yeah, other gyms available
down here. So we left like high and dry, and that I was very privileged to be part of the furlough scheme, but that took a little while for the cogs to kind of like click in with that. And, you know, as a lot of businesses in the UK, all across the world, they're, you know, that structure took a little while to kick in. So, but then the high from that, maybe we should cover your one next. But yeah, that was horrible. Just like how I'm going to earn my money. Also, I was so used to being outdoors and active the whole time. You know, I was worried about my clients as well because you know, there's people dying, and you know that hit me quite hard. And if anything, I probably am still in recovery from that time. Actually,
I think it's amazing how quickly people have been swept that away, because it was a really difficult time. It also created, you know, I remember a lot of, you know, happy memories from then of, you know, creating cherry bomb and all that kind of stuff. But it was mad. It was a mad time, a mad thing that's happened. And I feel like everyone is just, it's like it never happened now. Like it's something we don't talk about.
Yeah,
it affects us still.
I don't think it's that we don't talk, but for me, I started Go Succeed. So COVID had the opposite effect to me, because the business I was in, we made cleaning products. And we have franchisees across the UK. So everybody wanted sanitizer. So it was a really, really crazy time. So working long hours, and I took on other franchisees in the Southwest because we didn't have the regional manager stuff. It was just, Johnny will tell you, it was like every day, full on all the time. And that was when I got to 2021. I was driving to the Southwest and I loved it. I love working for Autosmart. I loved every moment of it. But then I was like, actually, I'm just doing all of this. And could I do something for myself? It wasn't because I didn't like the company. It's kind of like, you're in that corporate world and you're just working all the time. And I was really working all the time. So I suppose COVID gave me that reflection where I was like, hang on a minute, all these people are like, okay, it wasn't easy. I'm not saying it was easy, but from where I was at, probably people were furloughed. They're, you know,
from where Gary was at, he was looking out the window from the office in the house.
Yeah.
I was sunbathing.
Past my garden. You know,
like going to a whole, that guy was working.
I was on Zoom calls constantly. Yeah. And then I was driving across the UK because, you know, we were seen as key workers. So I had to train a brand new franchisee in the Southwest because we need to go on the road. And we had these massive plastic screens in the truck. It was crazy. But I drove to the Southwest to a hotel where there was nothing opened. There was no there was a time where there wasn't even a McDonald's open because McDonald's hadn't even sorted out their stuff. It was crazy.
Where was it? Gary went somewhere and they served him. He was able to go to a restaurant, have a pie, and someone served him a Guinness. And
I didn't have a pie. No, I was able to. Do you remember that whole bit of lockdown in December where you had all these different levels?
Yes, so you got a Guinness and you called me.
But I travelled to the Southwest, which was probably a bit illegal. Well, it wasn't illegal, it was allowed to, but I was meant to tell them that I was level 2 or whatever, and then I would have had to have what difference would it make? I would have had to have a pie with my pint. But what happened was I didn't. I walked in and was able to have a Guinness. It was the first time ever I was able to have a Guinness without having to buy something. And I text Johnny from the video. Oh, Johnny from the bar, gonna have a Guinness for the first time. I'm mad.
And I was at home. So Mike, what about halos?
Well, on that COVID, I mean, the most horrible thing is when you're going to the supermarket for your daily whatever you're allowed to do, walking past my bar, Affinity Bar, which I co-own, I'd seen it all boarded up, and knowing that there was no obvious end to it, not in the first lockdown, and whilst, you know, we had sort of staff furloughed, so we had some funding coming for that. The business support for the government just about covered the rent. Fortunately, I'm lucky enough to have a pension from the police, so I was, you know, secure in that sense. But just to see the bar close and knowing what we were missing.
And not knowing, like you say, not knowing where it's going to end. Like, we never knew. We were all in this scenario where I remember leaving the office in London and they said, we were like, well, how long do you think we'll be out of here? And I left stuff in my drawers and just didn't really, you know, we went and took what we needed for the next couple of weeks' work, because they said, probably a few weeks. And then it ended up being what it was. But it was that, I felt that period of time, for me, the first one was, you know, a little bit easier than the next one, but then not knowing when things were going to get back to normal, I think, was the hardest for a lot of people.
My key bit, if you remember this, was that everything was closed. Obviously, you could go to Waitrose or whatever, but there was a key bit where even coffee shops, everything, McDonald's, everything was closed. And we used, because you go out for walks, we used to take the dogs to Hove Park.
Oh, yeah.
And we arrived at Hove Park, and there's this enormous queue. So this guy, the coffee van, came back, right? And obviously no one had been having coffee or me ever. And I mean, I've never seen a queue all the way. And and the queue was so enormous because everybody was social distance. I don't think I've ever been so I don't think I've ever been so excited in my life. We joined the queue. It was like, everybody's like standing 2 meters apart joining this queue.
And Brits love a queue, and there was a queue with a meter in between each person.
It was the most bizarre thing I've ever seen. I forgot a video. It was like the length. I was like, what? Because I was like, what is everybody queuing?
That guy made some money. That guy made some money.
But that's one thing that still happens now, going back to your queue thing, because in the pub, there's people come in and they just automatically queue. Like, you can't spread down, that move down. And it seems to be from that time where we just had to queue for everything and stand apart. And
what about highs? What about any highs that you've had from work, career?
Well, I suppose that,
it's off the back end of what you said, COVID. Because as soon as they said, let's do this, or I had my clients contact me, they said, have you got Zoom? And I'm like, yeah. And they said, we'll still pay you. Like, I'm still working. I'll pay you. And we did Zoom calls in our pajamas. And I was just like, this is all right. So that you just, in the morning, just like brush my teeth, do my hair.
People fit.
Yeah. And then, what have you got in your house? Okay, just grab a couple of tins of baked beans. Then clients were like, oh, don't worry, I'm going to, we're quite affluent people I was working, we'll do work with. I've got a gym. And I'm just like, why have you told me this now? And so I was doing Zoom.
Yeah.
And then we did outside, and so I did outdoor PT sessions. It was cool.
Love that.
Yeah. And it just took off from there, really.
Nice.
Yeah, that was a really good year.
And Mike, any highs that you can think of?
In terms of my police career, I was very lucky. I did some very unique and interesting roles in the police. And about 3 years before retirement, I was working for Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary. We were going around police force and inspecting them in terms of what's called the Value for Money program. And I got a call while I was on holiday in Miami, and I was a little bit drunk. It was a holiday, and it was Assistant Commissioner say, "Oh, Mike, we'd like you to come back to the Met and take over the Metropolitan Police Specialist Firearms Command," which is a very challenging role. And I did. That was my last 2 years in the police service, and it was the icing on the cake. I've never met a more professional group of officers. It was a privilege to be their commander. We had some really challenging times in those 2 years, really challenging. But that for me, it meant when I retired, I literally Friday night finished in charge of the Special Firearms Command, and then retired the next day. And that was the icing on the cake for my policing career.
Oh, I've always thought about, because watching TV shows, you often see that where people are in the police or whatever and they go and retire. How does it actually feel like on that last day? Because you're not old and you're retiring, it must feel.
The weirdest thing is not having that warrant card in your pocket. You've carried this warrant card around for 29 or 30 years, and then not have it. And it's, you keep touching your pocket and say, I've lost it.
Yeah.
You know, that you've handed that back in. So that's probably the strangest thing. But retirement came fairly easy for me because I had a great career, as I say. I had a plan for my future, and I just enjoyed my future. Nice. Highlights beyond that, probably in our current world, I don't know if it's like for you, co-owning 2 bars. When the bar's full and perhaps you've got a great act on and people enjoying themselves, people, creating memories for themselves, that gives you a buzz. Yeah. And it is, there's nothing, better than a full bar of people enjoying themselves. You think, we're doing something good here. Yeah. Particularly, a bar that serves, the gay community and friends. It's just a lovely feeling. And when we can tie that to charity fundraising as well, which we've done on a few occasions, that just makes you feel, actually, there is a point to this. There is, despite, business rates and all the other financial challenges of running a small business, when you can do some good in terms of helping people create memories for the future in a nice, safe environment, and you can do something good for charity, it makes you feel, actually, we're doing something good here.
Yeah, great. I was going to say, great segue. So you talked about the bar, but how did you go from retiring? So you just talked about how you retired from the police last day to co-owning some bars.
Very briefly, for 3 years, I did a lot of travelling. I did all around the world and had a great time. I was starting getting a little bit bored, and a friend of mine said, "I've got first refusal on a bar. Would you like to do it? Would you like to come in?" And another drunken mode. It was on a drunken. A beach in Thailand, very, very drunk. It's, yeah, I'll do that. And then the week later, he phoned me up and said, "Oh, can you transfer some money? We now own a bar."
Oh, amazing.
And I love that. And the original idea was to be quite hands off, but I have business degrees. I was always interested in business, and going from in charge of a public service or part of an organisation into a small business, I wanted to see what the difference was. So I got started to get a little bit more involved. Then COVID happened. And then it was, okay, I now need to be involved because we need to work out how we can cut our costs to the minimum. And when we went for all the reopening, so I became much more hands-on. But that's been great as well. It's been.
And we love your bars. Tell us what your bars are and also what you're all about, because you do support the community a lot and you obviously serve the community very well. So yeah, tell us what are your bars?
I co-own 2 bars, an Affinity Bar in St James's Street. We've been there 8 years now. I think we've established something very special. It's now well-known part of the gay scene. We are a gay-owned bar, serving the gay community and friends. So it's not just it's for our own community. It's anyone who wants to come and enjoy and share that space and enjoy that space and maybe see how welcoming and inviting it is. My other bar I've had 4 years, again co-owned. That's the Grosvenor Bar in Hove, which is a smaller bar, but very, very much a community bar. It's got a big heart. In fact, one of the drag performers we had on Saturday night, when she was performing to, I think it was 25 customers from Northern Ireland celebrating a lesbian hen party. But it is a bar that has a huge heart, and we very, very committed to fundraising. And last 3 years, we've been fundraising for Lunch Positive, and so far we've raised over £5,000 for them. It's a great local charity. One that all that money, literally every pound, equals a meal for somebody. And so we're really, really pleased to support Lunch Positive, but also serve the community, correct, safe, inviting place for anyone.
And they really are. We love it. We love the Grosvenor. And I can never say the Grosvenor. I always say Grosvenor.
It's the Grosvenor.
No, it's the Grosvenor. Every time I say to my Grosvenor, it's the Grosvenor.
All my Irish friends say Grosvenor.
Yeah, the Grosvenor.
No.
Grosvenor.
Grosvenor.
Yeah, was it because you got the Grosvenor Road in Belfast?
Yeah, Grosvenor Road.
That's Grosvenor Road. Because it is. Yeah, so it's called Grosvenor.
It's very, very inclusive spaces, and I love it. I love performing there. We love going there. I bet the Irish lesbian hen party drunk you tried though.
They did actually. I was just saying, we never run out of vodka. We had biggest stash ever, and we did actually run out, but Jay had to go out. My business partner had to go out and buy a couple of extra bottles just in case. Our rule is we never run out. But they drunk us dry. They were absolutely lovely group of girls and guys.
Georgie, tell us about what you're up to now.
I'm still kind of doing my PT stuff and just kind of like holding off for a little bit because the weather's been so rubbish, obviously. So boot camp's relaunching end of March, mid-March.
So how do we tell people about boot camp?
So it'll be on social media. So it will be under PT Georgie D, I think, on Instagram. And I'm going to be putting some posters up in the pub and drop some red to you as well. And also I'm assistant manager at the Bottom's Rest pub in Hove, because you're just on the cusp of Brighton, aren't you?
We apparently, if you're in the back of the bar, you're in Hove. If you're in the front of the bar, you're in Brighton.
Right.
So we call it the Magic Triangle. So there's us, there's you, and then there's the Bedford as well, which are all old and favourite haunts as well, still to go to. So the Bottom's Rest pub, it got taken over 3 years ago by Brighton Gin, and a good friend of all of ours, Kathy.
Yeah.
And I've been there for 3 years on and off, and we call ourselves a community pub, and we have a very broad range of guests that will come in and join us, and customers. Most of the staff identify as queer, non-binary, gay, lesbian, have allies as well that work with us. And we are still finding our feet, or not finding our feet. I think we found our little niche now, but it depends what day it is that people come in and what's going on in town. Every day is very, very different, and I love it. It's really cool. Yeah, do some good food as well.
It's a great spot. Yeah.
We're doing really good roast. Roasted up. Always has. Yeah. We do. Yeah.
Good. Well, we'll tag your social. I can't wait for that. Pop into all of the pubs you mentioned, the Grosvenor, the Affinity Bar, and the Bottoms Rest. Absolutely. And Kathy Kitten is going to be a guest on Selling Out.
Yeah. Yes, she is. Yeah. But if you're from Belfast, look for the Grosvenor, because you take a Kimpies.
I think it's been fabulous talking to you. And the next thing I'll ask you is, do you have any advice for your younger self or people in the community who are getting into work, getting into business, getting into the police, or the prison service, or personal training, or any walks of life?
We're starting a pub.
Do you have any advice for your younger self and or anyone else in the community getting into the business world?
I mean, on the first part, I'd say if you can be your authentic self, be your authentic self. At some point, hopefully, you would regard us. But you can't really be the best version of yourself if you're hiding part of who you are. So I think, let's say that. In terms of business, just have confidence, go for it. If you've got an idea, it's hard work, it's exasperating. So many things, economically gets against you, particularly in the world of hospitality. But when it goes well, it really does go well. And I've no regrets. I say that now until I look at maybe the bank balance at the end of the week. But it's been a great journey and I've loved it. And, I said nothing better when you see your bar full with customers enjoying themselves and you're realising actually you're creating a great space for people to enjoy.
I love it. And in my other hat as Cherry Bomb, I genuinely look forward to performing in your venues. Like, I absolutely love it. It's such a welcoming space. Every single person who's there, from the punters to the staff, are absolutely incredible. So congratulations on that.
And on that, if I can do a little plug, a little shout out, we got St. Patrick's Day coming up. And on St. Patrick's Day, we always do a fundraiser for Lunch Positive. And on St. Patrick's Day this year, we've got a great night lined up. It's going to be food, traditional Irish music, moving to modern Irish music, and just a great night. But if you can't make the 17th, on the 15th, we've got a rather fabulous artist performing. Her name is Cherry Bomb.
Oh, Cherry Bomb. That will be on Sunday.
Sunday the 15th. So if you can't make the 17th, we're going to have a pre-St. Patrick's Day bash.
Gorgeous.
So
at the Grosvenor.
At the Grosvenor, and at the lovely Cherry Bomb.
Yeah.
So we'll be there performing.
Can't wait.
I might pop down for that one. Just round the corner.
Georgie, tell us advice.
Our younger self. And also speaking to my younger self, I probably wouldn't get it, but whatever your gut feels, you're probably right. And if you get an opportunity, I would grab it. And also just do what makes you happy. And as long as you can support yourself and do what makes you happy. I think
I love that.
Do what you love.
Do what you love. You'll never work. I always said that you'll never work a day in your life. If it is, it is that big thing.
And also just the people you surround yourself around. That's a massive thing.
It's huge.
Yeah, huge. And just, I'm so lucky to have the influences around me that I've had in my life, and also very privileged just to some of the people I've met in my lifetime as well. Just kind of like, wow. And, not opportunities lost, but just to have that bit of their influence rub off on me. I've met some amazing women, like real, Kathy's one of them, and also just a lot of people that have been in my life, whether they've stayed for a season or for the whole of my life, they've made a massive impact on me. So, I'm just grateful to all the women in my life.
Oh,
yeah.
Amazing. So beautifully said. And I think a lot of people will resonate with that. I definitely do, where whenever we talked about before being born being born queer or as we are, when you're different, you're not going to quite get it from your family or from your immediate surroundings. We kind of go out and seek that in people that, kind of advocates or role models or family. And once we find them, it's magical, isn't it? When you find people who really lift you up and support you for who you are.
You don't realise it at the time either, just like the lesson that you've learnt from them. And even now that oh my God, I'm going to be 50 in a couple of weeks. So,
No, you're not. 21 again.
yeah, well,
I love
48, 36, whatever you fancy. But it's, it's only now that the pennies are kind of having these penny dropping moments about those things that happened. And it's been really poignant today as well, just thinking about, oh, wow, I remember that. Things I've forgotten about that are kind of coming off.
Thank you so much for both of you being so open. And listen, we talk a lot. I just had my 40th. My birthday at the side. And it was, it is that thing where I do not feel, and that's kind of my advice always is like, it's never too late to be who you are and to do what you want to do and to do what you love, because actually there's so many stories out there that we talk about in our business when we give talks and things about people who think they haven't made it yet and it's too late or whatever. No matter what age you're at, you always feel that way, and there's never a limit. You said before, Mike, about a limit to your success. Sometimes we set our own barriers. Absolutely. And I think a lot of people feel that, but actually there's no day like today to go and make that one change or do that one thing that will change everything.
The fear to fail is imposter syndrome, which is did call it that, but yes, that you certainly said that earlier. That you don't know unless you try.
No, so you don't. And what I used to always say, it was a thing that came with me, followed me throughout my whole biking career. I used to say Fido a lot. Remember they got me a Fido. And there's two ways you can say it. So there's fuck it and drive on.
Yeah.
Or forget it and drive on. It's really, really important because, you just got to keep going. And someone said to me something which is like stuck with me a long time. Well, two things really. One was that if you're not going to be worrying about this in 5 years' time, it's not worth worrying about, right? Because if it's not something that's going to really impact, because you get very stressed about things in life. And it can be like, oh my goodness, it's the worst thing in the world. But actually, in 6 months' time, if you'll not be even thinking about this, then you shouldn't be stressing about it, really. And the other is that time is the biggest currency in the world, not money. And I know it's quite hard. And yes, you do need money to survive, but it's very interesting where what's that guy? There's a guy on Instagram who goes around and asking people, if I give you £5 million today, would you take it? And people go, yeah, I'd love to. Or if you had to not wake up tomorrow, would you still take it? And they're like, oh, no, obviously not. But it's just to kind of make you think, actually, time is more valuable. And I love that.
It's been so lovely. Thank you for being so open. I hope you've enjoyed our chat. I certainly have.
Yes.
Congratulations on your podcast. You're very privileged to be
The privilege the privilege is ours. Absolutely, can only get better from here.
That was we're learning. It was fabulous. I loved today.
It's been
learned so much.
I look forward to listening. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Georgie and Michael.